Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and welcome to the channel. Today is Thursday. Of course, it's Third Pillar Thursday, third pillar of exploration, and that's my child. That's my little baby. I love myself some third pillarism, and I hope you guys too. Um, yeah, I figured my workaround with the tech issues. Um, I had to cheat the juggle, so I figured out how to do it. Yeah. All right. So uh, we've been going. We've been on a mission on this cutting class series when we're talking about uh, the classic Dungeons and Dragons classes, which is why the series is called Cutting Class, and you know talking about the classic classes: fighters, wizards, rogues, which I'm old enough to remember when they were thieves, sorcerers, and all that kind of issue. But on this channel, each day we do, even though we like to get a little bit squirrely, we do have a particular theme. And on Thursdays, that's where we get to talk about the third pillar of exploration, with the first and second pillar corresponding to combat and social interactions. And the third pillar of exploration to me represents so much of the game. It's like an atrophied muscle. It's the thing that sometimes I feel like it's difficult to encompass, yet I feel like it's the tool that really needs to be used in our role playing games, if for no other reason than to have it as an option, as many of us are excellent and brilliant creators, and to surprise our players and to just make things more dynamic and memorable, and save a little money by having to keep buying more books to keep our role playing uh, drug like habit going on and on. So this week we are talking about the classic fighter, and there are a couple of vectors I think we can travel down, a couple of pathways we can travel down when it comes to exploration and fighters and battle, and how we can use the third pillar to really enhance our games. So the first thing that comes to mind for me, and you guys know I'm a very visual individual. I always bring up television and movies, and one of the things that always comes to mind with me, because of my over analytical mind when it comes to movies and television, are it's the real estate mantra, right? Location, location, location. Where are they filming? Where is this taking place? Where's the action at? And so a lot of if you think back to the Lord of the Rings movies, they always had the helicopter flyby, drone flyby scenes of the adventuring party going through these desolate or beautiful and remote landscapes. And why aren't those landscapes really embraced? I mean, far more than narratively, but mechanically into our games. So, um, as your self-appointed third pillars of the RPG community, I'm here to bring that to light. All right, so we already understand that in much of Dungeons and Dragons, if we don't use a lot of one-off books, I know Pathfinder has a number of one-off books. I understand that you could start naming like the Ultimate Fighter books and Ultimate Combat books, et cetera, et cetera. One other way to make combat dynamic is to really embrace the environment. And how often have we played games where, say, the weather has a huge impact on a battle? Torrential rain, frigid snow, blizzards, um, blistering heat, uh, trying to scale up and down sand dunes. I mean, have we ever done that? Maybe even a massive fight on an angled hill with trees and exposed roots, and lots of moss and rocks jutting up, or during landslides or earthquakes, or any number of these things. Fighting while running, escaping from or chasing enemies across raging rivers, or having to balance your way across ravines in a rainforest to get to the other side, and knowing that the tree that fell across that ravine that you balanced across, a couple of axe swings at it, and maybe that tree could fall down into a ravine, protecting you and preventing the enemies from scrambling across to you. These are the kind of environmental options and details I think we should run place in the game when it comes to these major battles. Now, I understand Magic has a lot to do with the game, and Magic gives us plenty of options. But even before those options, this idea that we have unfortunately separated like layers, traps, puzzles, riddles, um, obstacles, hazards, separated them. I think bringing them together is and making them neutral, making them unlinked from the adversaries. Lair actions are usually attached to a major monster or the home base of something, but like an alligator's lair is a swamp, but the alligator doesn't control the swamp. The swamp is what it is. And having the players be able to use and abuse the environment, I think, is always a great thing. The Now, of course, talking about weather, talking about the natural environment, but listen, we have to add in if we're going to talk about fighters. We've got to talk about battles. What fighter or what? There's nothing greater with fighters than having battles. Andres Martin says, I love the idea of terrain actions. Never thought of that. Yeah, well, okay. I'll do this really quickly because as your self-appointed third pillars, please vote for me. No, you can't vote for me because I'm a dictator. I, I self-appointed myself into this position. So wait a minute, I'm supposed to be unfair about this. Anyway, but seriously though, AM, um, the idea of not just terrain actions, but it depends on how you want to use the terrain to have an action, right? Like for example, um, I've come up with my own shorthand when describing terrain, and not just terrain, but like, and I know what you mean when you say quote terrain actions. Like it could be physical terrain, like rocks or sand or coastal regions or something. It could be weather events like thunderstorms or fog or wind, and sometimes our terminology, if we don't have a terminology, we may not understand what we're talking about. So for me, there's static environmental effects. We already have static environmental effects like darkness, fire, underwater, fog. Okay. And static, what I mean by that is it it overlays the environment, whether it's small, like maybe like a small fire, or large, like fog covering many miles or kilometers, or darkness, but it doesn't, either you're in it or you're out of it. Like either you're in the fog or you went into the cave, or you're in the darkness or you light a torch, right? There's also timed events as far as relating to what you're saying about terrain actions. Could be a timed event, could be every round a wave sweeps across sweeps into the beach or across the deck of the ship or over the docks when the PCs are fighting what I'm going to mispronounce them, Sahogan, or the lamprey, the lamprey slash shark like creatures, whatever. But a timed event could be something that happens like you're fighting in a clock tower and the dangerous grinding gears sweep through the space where you're fighting your enemy. A timed event could happen every round, every other round. It could be random, rolling a d4 and it happens that many rounds later, maybe like a lightning strike out of the sky. And a timed event could be um, a timed event could happen very regularly. A geyser spewing out, acid or heat or something, or a volcano exploding and dropping debris out of the sky. There's also randomized events, so you could have make a D6 or D8 list, roll on that randomized list, and the thing happens. Now I'm going to bring up the Battle of the Bastards from Game of Thrones, and of course I can't play that on the channel, but go on YouTube, look up Battle of the Bastards, and watch that the right past the prologue when Jon Snow tries to save his relative. I'm not going to go into details, but you see the when the during the Battle of Bastards, when that huge wave of horses comes out and Jon Snow pulls out his sword, and then all of a sudden there's chaos raining around him. Maybe you make a battlefield where you have random events like arrows out of the sky, a huge clutch of, I don't know, a wild horse runs by, a spear flies past the PCs, a chunk of debris gets thrown through the air and falls nearby where the PCs are at from some kind of siege machine. Maybe something catches on fire, or a barbaric horde, having not necessarily focused on the PCs, but they're all smashed together and they could like knock the PCs down and trample on top of them. Same thing with a cavalry charge, or so on and so forth. Maybe there's some random events. You could also have activated or stimulated events, meaning if the PCs or enemies do something, then something else happens. Like, for example, you're fighting on a frozen lake and someone decides to use some kind of pyromatic ability or strike the ice or something. So having terrain actions, I think, makes a lot of sense, even to the point of forcing skill checks, saving throws, ability checks to avoid or navigate through dangerous regions. Let's go back to that volcanic eruption, right? And then there's like a flaming stone falling out of the sky because there's a big, huge volcanic eruption. Maybe there's lava rolling down the mountainside. There's fissures opening up, and people can fall into the fissures. Maybe there's toxic fumes spewing out of the earth. Maybe there's sweeping toxic gases that are like choking fumes and thick like fog. So having an action, let's say, takes place on like initiative 10 or 15 or rolling randomly. I default to using initiative 10 for like the natural environment, but like just as opposed to like lair actions that happen on initiative 20. But you could do it any kind of way where maybe if the PCs act before initiative 10, like on initiative 15, you are putting more of the decision making into the player character's hands rather than forcing difficulties onto the players and making their life terrible. So player characters are like pulling their swords, they've got their weapons, they're on a battlefield, and it's the next round of combat, and you roll a d20, and you're like, all right, I rolled a 16. All right, guys, you see to the left that the your enemy has set fire to the siege tower, and many of your allies are jumping for it, escaping the siege tower. But you see that it's rolling downhill and rolling towards you. On initiative 16, you guys are going to need to make acrobatics checks or athletics checks to get out of the way before it like falls over and falls into your region. Oh, by the way, if it falls onto you, there's a good chance you're going to be like trapped by it with the burning siege machine engine, but it'll become difficult terrain, and you can even use it as cover or something like that. And if a PC is like, well, I'm on initiative 18, can I move first? You sure can. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, but I might have to disengage from those ogres. I don't know. What should I do? And all of a sudden now the player characters now have to make decisions, and putting more decisions into the players without preloading that one decision is better than another, I think is the best part of using the environment. So, another part of of establishing like battlefield actions within this realm is this idea of narrative positioning. I don't know if any of you have There's a gentleman named Adam Coble. His channel's actually shut down now, but he's talked very often about narrative positioning. And narrative positioning is this idea that um, while we don't often, it is a very unconscious thing we do, but we automatically assume it in role playing games. So a narrative position is the difference between a bow or crossbow and a longsword, right? We understand that a longsword is not a ranged weapon. We agree collectively that the narrative of a longsword is I grab it and I strike things, and that a crossbow or a bow launches things through the air. And despite the fact that this is we are now talking theater of the mind. We are all on the same page. Hey, I'm going to draw my bow back and shoot an arrow. Okay, we all agree that the enemy that's very far away can be hit by the arrow, but the enemy is so far away I cannot hit it with my sword. So and of course there is that narrative. Well, narrative positioning also means that sometimes we might need to take the narrative position that the rules in the narrative, although they seem incongruous, they don't seem to match up. Really, they do match up. So what I mean by this is that in a battle, if we're talking about fighters, we're talking about skirmishes, and we want to really embrace this idea of not just war, but skirmishes, battles, being scouts, going through the terrain, fighting. Maybe the PCs are on a mission to rescue someone or get important documents from one side of a battlefield to another, or be a decoy to get an enemy combatants to follow them into a trap or what have you. That despite the fact that a cavalry charge is made up of horses or elephants or camels or whatever that are sweeping through the battlefield, that mechanically we don't need to write down, oh, there's 37 cavalry. Let me go get the stat blocks for cavalry. Maybe we just make them a DC, an obstacle. Give it an AC, give it a damage, give it some hit points, and that's all you need. Give it a movement rate. When the barbarian horde sweeps through your region. We've seen battles in movies and television and such, and where the main character is like fighting, but you see these things going on around them. And although the main characters aren't the focus of these other enemies, they get caught up in it, like being knocked down by the barbarian horde and being trampled, right? We don't need to accommodate, 87 barbarians. All we need is that, wow, there's this big group. It takes up this much space. It is this, let's give it a DC. And I've even defaulted to, hey, make the DC equal to its armor class, equal to its hit points, and you're done. Give it a damage potential, and you're done, right? Let's say that barbarian horde is a DC of 18. Well, my paladin, could my paladin fight my way through that terrain action that's happening on the battlefield that's about to knock me down while I'm having a fight with let's go away from ogres. Let's say there's I need something battlefield related. Okay, some bugbears or something, right? And this barbarian charge is going to possibly knock the paladin down and smush their face into the muck and the mud, or blood-soaked, battlefield or what have you. Sure, they could strike at the 18 armor class, but maybe it's better for the paladin to make a DC, resist a DC 18 check with their athletics to get the hell out the way, or take that disengage action to get away from the bugbears who are dragging away the prisoners, to try to get them to the other side of the battlefield and whatnot. And of course, there's all kinds of things you can put in a battlefield, whether it's moats, pits, blasts of fire, all kinds of debris. And again, I've said this before, use and abuse. If the player characters, I often use the example that some people claim that the push shove action, knocking someone prone or knocking them 5 feet away, is useless. And I say yes, unless you have some place to knock them into. So do you knock them off of a castle wall or into an open pit, or knock them into a burning fire, or knock them into a phalanx of spears that might, poke them? If you've got that phalanx wall of spears and tower shields coming towards the player characters, maybe the more athletic character can run, jump, and flip over the pikes that are with reach weapons that are keeping them pushed back. Whereas maybe the slower, less agile characters can hold their position, being very strong, but are unable to fight their way through that phalanx. And so a lot of those, you can just start giving them some stats, some general stats, and throw them in randomly, have things happen. And you can have some even good things happen to the player characters. Maybe the players using exploration, maybe they explore or move to a different section of the battlefield, and they find some allies who become meat shields and whatnot. And so those allies, those roll a d10, 8 allies become 8 extra temporary hit points around you that start taking arrows to the skull and whatnot, dying around you like the sacrificial buddies that they are, narratively speaking, but maybe mechanically they are temporary hit points for your PC, right? And I just think that there's a way for us to embrace the narrative without complicating the mechanics or making the mechanics very hells yes. Andrew Smart's like, random red shirt, hell yeah. Why not gift a player with that? Why not have recontextualize, yep, meat shields, hell yeah. Why not recontextualize inspiration into something else? Why not allow the players to explore the environment? And exploration doesn't necessarily mean holding up a torch going into a dungeon. It could be, oh, our allies are stuck behind enemy lines. Sure, it might be better to blast through the enemy, but maybe we should go off to this other region because our mission says we should reestablish connections to our allies stuck behind enemy lines. And maybe that's the gift you give them. Maybe it's not a magic item or a boon. Maybe it is, narratively speaking, they get what's the spell? I think it's called False Life. You guys, my brain sucks when it comes to recalling this stuff. Well, I think it's the False Life spell. You get temporary hit points. Okay, you get a bunch of red shirts, a couple of meat shields. Here you go. And you, of course, you can do the whole narrative like, Bobby, no, the fall to the knees, screaming to the heavens because or how many times have we seen that in a movie where the hero stops, is speaking to one of their allies who's like, hey, we need to go this way. Thunk, right in the eye, boom, they die. Why not? Why the hell not? Tired needs sleep. TNS says, I think the Shieldmaster feat is quite underrated. Shoving someone into the path of a rock slide? Priceless. Oh, hell yeah, sliding. I mean, I get that, especially at low levels, tier 1, shoving and pushing someone, knocking someone down might be pretty useless because on their action, they can get back up, right? And maybe that's a description of how good of a combatant you are, right? Like, maybe you are too low level enough, you aren't masterful enough to then knock someone down and stab them in the throat. Now, some people would say, well, mathematically speaking, it's better to strike someone twice than to knock someone down first and then strike them. I would dispute that because most average humans don't have much more than single digit hit points. So that's an element of us understanding how the game works, not how the world works. Tired Knee Sleep says, generic soldier number 5302 was a good man. I miss him. Generic soldier. I miss you so much, generic soldier. His name was Anthony. Yeah, whatever. You're messing with my dramatic moment. Andrew Smartin says, or do you like 4th edition? Make 1 hit point minions and the PCs can control them. I did that once, and the PCs get too attached to the minions. In some cases, they like them more than their characters. You know what? Minion rules is perfect. There, the minion rule isn't brand new. There is a role playing game called Feng Shui, and not flower arranging and moving furniture, but it is the action role playing game. And in Feng Shui, there is I hate the term, but they call them mooks, cannon fodder. And in that game, they don't even bother. Gaster, what's going on? I got to talk to you, Gaster, about something, but not right now. There is a element of the game where unnamed crunchy bad guys, all you need to do is roll and hit them. You don't even need to roll damage. Don't even bother. If you hit them, they're taken out. And oh, by the way, okay, how do I describe this? The Feng Shui method. If the result of your action is simple, then the description of how you get to that action can be as complex as you want. So, and this deals with the rule of cool and why there could be some conflict with the rule of cool, especially since the rule of cool has a lot to do with embracing the third pillar of exploration, which is like stunt work, cool things, using the environment and whatnot. Here's an example. If all you're trying to do is fight some bad guys and you give them, let's say you make them all 1 hit point minions, there's a ton of 1 hit point minions on the bad guy's side, the PCs get to control, roll some dice, 37 minions on their side, and control their actions. And the player character wants to take their longsword and strike at a bunch of bad guys, right? I think too often we as gamers get caught up too far into the mechanism of it and don't separate the narrative from the mechanics. So if the player character, all they want to do is kill things, then let them describe as nearly as outrageous of a mechanic they want to, including all the musical beats, right? I think of these as musical beats. So I take my longsword and I strike my bad guy. Well, the musical beats are I dodge and swing, then parry aside, then punch him in the face, grabbing the person's arm, leg tripping them, and stabbing them in the throat. Well, if all I did is kill 1 hit point character, let them do that. Now, I know there's some game masters out there that are like, well, you can't grab someone by the arm, move their shield aside, then leg trip them, then kick them in the, stab them in the throat, because that's like 8 actions stacked in one. And my contention to that is does it matter, right? It's neither a win or a loss. It's just a rule of cool. It's just description. And then when you're using 1 hit point minions, that's the whole point. Let people feel like a badass, right? Yeah, Gasser, you're right. You didn't do anything wrong at all. It's the complete opposite. You have inspired me to want to ask you that sometime in the future to use your creative creation to do some background digital elements for me. Not right now, but in the future. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. That's why. So you're fine. All right. Getting back to it. It's the reason why I say it's a problem and an issue when it comes to like it's the classic, I want to swing, jump up in a chandelier, swing on a chandelier and strike the enemy, right? And the problem that I see what happens is that a game master or dungeon master will say, well, make an athletics check. Yeah, Gaster, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So someone says, hey, game master says, make an athletics check. And my issue with that is there's no upside to that, right? Player character wants to be cool. They want to swing across the chandelier. If they fail the swing across the chandelier check, then they fail to strike their enemy. But what if they succeed? Well, great, they made a roll and they succeeded, but they get no benefit for that. So my contention is either A, if you're going to add more die rolls, you should add an equal element of a bonus to it, an extra attack, the ability to move across, to move without hindrance across difficult terrain, the ability to strike someone from behind and gives them some kind of flanking ability or advantage or damage bonus, or add some kind of condition to what they're doing, like they're able to knock the person down as well or stun them or something like that. If you're going to bother to penalize them for failing the thing, you should add an advantage to it. Or, if you want to be simple about it, neither add nor subtract anything from it. Oh, it's just a move action, right? This chandelier swing is just the rule of cool, but all you're doing is moving from A to B, whatever. Okay, so what? You parkour your way. You're a badass, Assassin's Creed character, and you're running across ledges and backflipping and all that kind of. Well, okay, cool. You're just moving from A to B, and you're describing it really slickly. All right, whatever. Let's move on. Please describe it. Oh yeah, you're a badass. All right, cool. All right, and especially if these are one hit point people, if we're really embracing the minion thing, you gotta let people open up a can of whoop on them. Now, circling back into using the environment as well. There are lots of battlefield things we can use in environments. Escalating environments are a great tool to use as well, to create tension and drama. And I think it's the one thing we tend to lose in our back pocket when analysis paralysis really grips our PCs, right? So our PCs are fighters. They must cross a dangerous realm of constant war and battle, and you tell the PCs, okay, you've got 3 hours to get this important message to the front lines of the battle. And the PCs go, I don't know how we're going to do this. Are we going to fly? I don't know. I still have to craft this staff for my character. Oh, I wanted to get this armor built, and you're sitting there like, don't, like, you've got a couple of hours. Like, why are you just standing there? So the environment is a great way to get the PCs moving, to kick them in their ass, right? To set a fire behind them, to say, okay, listen, I know you're trying to think of a lot of things, but keep moving, right? It doesn't matter the decision, just make a decision. And so an escalating environment is, all right, you fight a couple of scouts, but you know that there's a massive army coming behind them. You see a forest fire, and that fire is spreading through the wilderness. There is a storm coming, and the torrential rain is followed by thunderstorms, and now there's starting to be mudslides. There's the castle walls are crumbling, and you're trying to defend the place against the enemy, and yet they're still trying to smash down the portcullis, or the closed castle doors with the ram's head, and yet you see on the horizon that they're bringing a giant, I don't know. I don't know. What's a big, massive monster? A dragon turtle or something like that. To with chains dragged behind it, and they're going to attach the chains to the walls and whatnot. Gaster's like, you need to deliver this message to the general, but I need to upgrade my mirror of copying. A little callback to yesterday, boom, boom. But yeah, I mean, those PCs that are like, I still want to go crafting. It's like, you don't have time to go crafting. When you're doing battle on a storm-tossed ship, and yet that white-capped wave that's towering over the mass of the crow's nest and whatnot, you don't have time to, like, I don't know what I should do. Should I go below deck? I don't know. I got a spell that I want to cast with concentration, but no, make a decision. Come on. Those are the kind of things that when the environment is escalating, when things start getting worse and worse, the winds start getting terrible, the fog gets thicker, the smoke is more, it becomes choking and it spreads, the undead army starts sweeping in and there's more of them, the you're hiding in the brush and there are more soldiers looking around for you, and there's ever more eyes as they poke and prod through the brush to look for you, and you realize that, eventually sure, I've got past without trace and I'm a badass rogue and my friend's a badass ranger, but enough disadvantage to the applying disadvantage to those stealth checks eventually will have us found, and we're surrounded and there's more enemies. Yeah, we got to get a move on, because we can't stay here forever. And so the environment is a great thing to get people moving. That volcanic eruption with the lava spewing out, you might need to get the hell off the island there, Jurassic World, right? So Also, when it comes to battles and fighting, the great thing about the environment is we get to have win-loss conditions that have nothing to do with killing or being killed. So I love triangles. I know it's been described as other things, but I call them triangles. And triangles mean, for me, in a gaming context, is like we've got our adversaries, we've got our PCs, who are the heroes, the protagonists. We've got our adversaries, our enemies, our antagonists. But what's that third element, right? What's the win? What's the thing that can change the tide? What's the win condition? What's the chaos factor? What's the monkey wrench? Is it when the PCs must lead the enemy into a trap? Is it a good thing for the PCs to win that battle? No. The win condition is pretending like they're losing, running and being followed by the enemy so that they go through the valley and then are trapped in a funnel of death, right? Maybe the win condition is getting, like Gaster says, you need to deliver this message to the general, right? That's the win condition, not beating up all of the orcs. You got to get past the orcs. The important thing is not you winning, but the army winning. You're the fighter. You need to get, you and your allies or fighters too. You need to get to the front lines, deliver the message, right? So that's might be the win condition. And you could have a lot of micro win conditions, dragging injured allies off the field of battle, help making sure that a siege tower or ladders or ram, I don't know what the thing is that rams castle doors and walls and portcullises down, but whatever that thing is that does that, um, uh, setting that up and defending that as your allies get that ready to siege the castle. Maybe that's the win condition. Oops, now that you've done that, now you've got to do something else. Another win condition might be defending a leader or a noble while they rage into battle. Maybe sending up the banners or blowing the horn or swinging the flag to alert your allies as to maneuvers or retreating, or letting them know whether the battle was successful, to let the cavalry or the archers or whatever, the skirmishers, whatever, into the fallen castle wall that's to the north that they can't see. So maybe it's necessary for you to blow the horn or to hit the war drums, or to raise the banners, right? And so um, uh, the the environment establishes with us, yes, if you are only measuring success by the amount of damage that you do and hit points you have, then only the people who have the most and do the most damage are going to feel like they're successful. Everyone else is going to feel like, in a vacuum, it's like, oh, well, of course my bard sucks because the barbarian and paladin and rogue are dishing out the most damage. And my contention is, sure, in a vacuum, yeah, that's the case. But maybe the bard and the warlock and the sorcerer are more effective because they can sneak through the battlefield while the damage dealers are drawing the enemy away. Maybe they become more effective by leading that cadre of 12 ogres into the mountain pass to be trapped there into the rock slide that the cleric decided to create by putting them in the funnel of death, while a paladin is one-shotting, an ogre at a time by damage dealing, right? So effectiveness is the mission you're looking for, to give to the PCs, not necessarily damage dealing. There are other things too as well, like there's lots of conditions you can lay, hazards, obstacles, consequences you can overlay into the environment that start to stack high enough that it becomes as much of a more detriment than it is to lose hit points. An example would be, we all know what difficult terrain is, capital D, capital T, right? Okay, half movement essentially is what happens. Okay, but that's boring. But what happens if it's difficult terrain? Oh, you also, the high winds also give you disadvantage on your launching your ranged attacks. Ooh, man, wow. Okay, now it goes from high winds to torrential rain. So now it's you have resistance against fire it's reducing your fire pyromantic abilities down to half their ability. Like they're only lasting half its duration and only does half its damage. You're like, damn, okay. And you're still standing there, and then all of a sudden things get even worse. Maybe now the fog rolls in or something, and the rain becomes a monsoon, and your visual distance is knocked down to only 20 feet. And so even if you wanted to shoot enemies past 20 feet, you can't even see them. And now the sun's going down and it's darkness, and you can only see yeah, I've got dark vision, but you can only see 60 feet. So yeah, you hear enemies, but beyond 60 feet, you don't know how many are out there, what they're doing, and are they collecting around you, and are they surrounding you, and are they getting reinforcements? You don't know. And so things start to get worse and worse, i.e., escalating, and then it becomes this point where the player characters might feeling like, um, okay, maybe we shouldn't just stand here and hit things about the head and shoulders. Maybe we need to move, make different decisions, use different tactics. And lastly, listen, I don't understand why this is a thing. You can still socially interact with people while you're fighting. You can actually open your mouth and start having conversations, even if it is cussing, and balling up your fist into the face of your enemies. Right? The enemies can do the same thing, and it's a good way to info dump. Psst. Guess what? In the middle of combat, while somebody's looking up their spell effects or whatever, and they're taking the time, have people like badmouth each other on the battlefield and info dump while you're doing it. Gaster Two Soul says, perhaps the landscape during these wars have been pretty messed up. Sorry to let my inner world building run out. You are perfectly fine, man. Things like battle mages unleashing their most powerful weapons. Exactly. Leaving behind massive craters on where army camps once laid. And maybe those craters, well, maybe they're just dangerous craters, because I'll finish your comment. But okay, so maybe they're just regular craters. They're big pits in the ground. Maybe they're very difficult to climb out of and very easy to slide into. Maybe there's something left in those craters. Acid, blasted eldritch energy, something dangerous, maybe glyphs left there. But let me continue your comment. Fighters dug beneath the ground trying to make trenches which had collapsed. Ooh, trench warfare, World War One. Look up what's the movie? 1917. Look up anything around about World War One and trench warfare, and translate that into fantasy gaming. You'll never run out of great ideas in a battlefield. Okay, fighters dug beneath the ground trying to make trenches which had collapsed, killing several people under the weight of the dirt and mud. Trees are dying from how much destruction had rained, and maybe with some gases released through the help of druids and whatnot. Yeah, I it's I as many. I think they estimated upwards of 60 million people died during World War One. So I am not making light of the people who had sacrificed their lives, or had their lives sacrificed during World War One. But this is a tabletop RPG stream, so that's what we talk about. And so, if you're looking for real facts and things of that nature, you're going to need to find someplace else. Well, here we talk about tabletop role-playing games, and unfortunately, World War One is a great uh, is a great fount of of um, of inspirational fuel. Trench warfare, no man's land, toxic gases sweeping through the the battlefields. Uh, constructs, living constructs that are mechanical, spewing out steam with their inner hearts, fueled like a raging fire or something, as iron golems, beset with weapons on their shoulders, with tank treads, or mechanical beasts with multiple legs start walking through the battlefield and whatnot. I mean, all these things you can throw around, and not only do you not have to have them be living creatures, they could just be random things that, like, oh, it might be shorter a distance for you to go from A to B. Like, okay, Gaster Wood says the battlefield is just mangled beyond belief, having the players getting a higher difficulty from trying to get from point A to point B. Exactly. So we're both here, right? Um, so it might be easier, or not. Sorry, let me take this back. It might be shorter distance to get from A to B, but more difficult to get through the shorter distance than it would be to go around it. So yes, it is a straight line from A to B. That's the shortest distance, but you might have to worry about arcane snipers, poison gas, the ground collapsing below you, your allies screaming for help because they are dying and they need your assistance, but you're trying to remain silent. Maybe there are unexploded types of ordnance, and the unexploded ordnance could be magical glyphs, spells that were cast somehow that were, as arcane casters were sniped in the back of the head, their spells were not released. So you have the delayed blast fireballs going off, or like Gaster Wood says, not to mention eldritch radiation being left by powerful weapons created by magi. That broken rod, staff, or wand that was dropped, that was exploded and left in that crater, might still be leaking some kind of eldritch radiation that might be burning the flesh away, or causing some kind of polymorphic effects to you or something. Or maybe there's some kind of sweeping gas cloud or something that's causing people to transform into other kind of monstrous entities. Maybe there are living oozes now that have been left behind after months, years, generations of battle in a battlefield that's been destroyed. Those maybe the living landscape, the natural landscape, is mindless. The natural treants, plant life, and things, elementals are so poisoned now from the radiation that has been eldritch radiation, that you can no longer bargain with them. The treants are poisoned, they're dead, they're nearly or mechanically undead living plants. Maybe the instead of earth, air, fire, and water elementals, there are what would be an earth one? Like water might be acid, air might be toxic fumes, fire might be radiation, earth might be rusted steel. Gaster Wood says, or the stray flying broom flying around the sky trying to find someone to ride its handle into some poor soul's rectum. So some old witch riding its side saddle, her leg dangling from it because she got sniped with a couple of arrows and whatnot. But I mean, there's all kinds of things that might be happening on the battlefield. Undead creatures, like I said, injured people, some blinded ogre swinging their club around randomly trying to attack something because they hear some kind of enemy. The screams of the dead causing psychological harm. Maybe this is the time you start pulling out your sanity check rules. And a little self-promotion here. Here in the cinematic environs, I know none of you know this, so don't spread this around, but in the cinematic environs, we have something called despair, and it is the psychological version of exhaustion. So, and despair runs in tiers, just like exhaustion. So you can get, um, as you can gain levels of exhaustion physically, we also have tiers of despair where you get psychological exhaustion. Yep, sanity meter comes out, and you start hearing, when the battle ends, you start hearing the screams of the dead and people running around half blind or trying to grab their entrails and pull them inside, or they're dragging their upper body while their lower body is barely attached to their spinal cord or something, or people are trying to pray, to the gods that are not listening to them and whatnot. I mean, these are the kind of things that you can add. And yes, psychological harm can be an environmental effect. It is the I could push on through this environment knowing that I'm going to need to start making my wisdom checks or what have you, to get through it, or I can, I can take the short rest. I can, acquire the need to rest for an hour or two to get my bearings. But the mission still needs to go on, and I've got this very important missive I need to get to the front line. What do I do? And you put that in the hands of the players and let them make that choice. Gaster says you might go to sleep and you'll wake up hallucinating your best friend sitting there just smiling because of shell shock. Oh hell yeah. Yeah, and who's to say that, a hallucination doesn't become an environmental effect? You see something on the battlefield. Maybe that hallucination, we can translate that into your enemy acquiring the mirror image spell effect because you see multiples of, or you're distracted by something. You have disadvantage temporarily because you fail to save or an ability check or something. You could even have, you could do this by, you could start counting this off, check marking. Hey guys, when you get to you acquire five, I don't know, like 5 sanity points, you're going to have to start making saving throws. Or you've been in battle for 12 days. What's your proficiency? What level character are you? Oh, you're third level. Okay, so you can go for battle for 3 days, but after 3 days, you're going to have to start making checks. And sure, maybe the PCs are like, oh, well, I keep making my saving throws or my ability checks. That's good, but also here we go with the tension timer. Here's we go with the environment. Maybe it starts to build. Yeah, you're ignoring. Oh, I'm a badass fighter. Why would I be shell shocked, battle fatigued, PTSD'd, right? Why would that affect me? But maybe the save is, oh, it's only a DC of 10, and the next day is 11, 12, 13, 14, etc., etc. Maybe even it starts to build based on how much of the allies around the player characters they use, like meat shields and other great effects that the players have. The more they use them, maybe the greater the reward, the greater the punishment, right? So you want to use eight points of meat shield. Okay, you're fine. 8 of your allies just got hacked off while you went slaying many enemies in battle, but because you used your reskinned false life, we're going to have to increase the DC to 12 now. You know, um, TNS says, tired needs sleep says, generic soldier number of 5,302 died off. Might be worse for you, right? Oh man, Gaster says, roll a d20. Uh, okay, so that shrapnel shard going through Corporal Windlander just made you lose 7 points of sanity. But since you're level 4, I'll go easy on you. Oh yeah, hell yeah, yeah. Why not? Why? And we can do this above board, right? We don't need to hide this from the player characters. We can just say it's session 0, and remember, session 0 doesn't need to be zero doesn't need to come before 1. We can say, oh guys, you know what, since we're really moving into a battle war type skirmish kind of thing, I got this great idea. So average human has 10 intelligence, so I'm going to give everybody 10 points of sanity, um And temporarily, with a big asterisk next to it, we're going to start counting sanity points. And um, when you start running out of sanity, then you're going to have to start making checks or whatnot. And maybe your players are like, yeah, okay, let's do that. Like Gaster Two Soul says, sometimes a bit of experimenting won't be so bad. And again, much like making any home rule, put an asterisk next to it. Hey, let's experiment a little bit, but guys, if this doesn't work, let's get rid of this home rule. And everyone goes, yeah, let's experiment. If it works for us and at our table, hell yeah. Maybe it doesn't work, and everyone goes, well, all right, let's wipe our hands of it. No big deal. Let's get rid of it. Why not do that? Why not have that be a thing in a environmental effect? It can be very psychological. Now, there's other things as well with the players abusing the environment. Let the players create barriers against battle, creating their own half and three quarters cover. Let them light fires lighting that going back to that siege tower that fell over and was burning. Maybe they light that damn thing on fire, or it's on fire and they're hiding behind it so that they can hide from their enemy. Oh, sure. How about those piles of dead bodies? Those dead bodies might be there might be enough of them on the battlefield that it is difficult terrain, that you do have to climb over the dead bodies to get to the other side, or the enemy or the PCs decide to pull some of their allies and enemies over top of them as dead people to hide, so that other soldiers or other killing machines are going through, or undead are going through the battlefield, and they avoid them. Let them do that. Let them be badasses. Why not? Let it happen. Maybe it doesn't happen all the time, but sure. You could even go so far as to start adding after effects, right? How much? How about carrion birds flocking overhead from all the death and destruction? Maybe there are swarms of insects, such as locusts, maggots, flies, rats. Those kind of things start flooding the best. Sturges. What are some other blood sucking things out there? Gnats and mosquitoes. The smell becomes overwhelming. The rot starts affecting the landscape. It starts. The eldritch energy starts mutating the land. Maybe the player characters themselves, hey, I've got a bunch of cantrips. I'm going to cast a bunch of spells, and you're like, yep, ghouls and sturge swarms. Yep, the ghouls are like, bring out your dead, right? How, and it might not even have anything to do with that was odd. Okay, gave me a little message there. Maybe the player characters come upon a bunch of ghouls chewing on some tasty ally internal organs, and sturges swarming overhead. Again, escalating the environment. Sure, you can stick around, but damn, would you really want to? Uh, getting those penalties on charisma because you've got gristle all caked on your body and whatnot. Uh, Gaster Two Soul says, I do have the morbid idea of losing an army using their own dead soldiers as barricades. Yep. We saw that in 300. Well, it wasn't their own soldiers, but you get the point, right? They made a giant wall of dead bodies. Um, I may or may not have some new diseases, lich rot, um, cam Cambrianism, and some more. Do you mean like Cambian is Cambrianism? Don't know what that means, but it sounds nasty and I like it. So yeah, like the number of ghouls and sturges that are around, the number of like ravens, vultures, jackals, hyena. Um, a lot of these things might be so terrible that it behooves the player characters to move the hell on. Not exactly sure what types of carrion creatures swarm around, say, giant-sized monsters and creatures, because we often don't even talk about that. But yeah, no, you know. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. You guys know I have a special love for the using the environment. Of course, I'm 9 books into writing the cinematic environs. At some point, 2 books to go. Hopefully, maybe 3. I'm thinking just 2 books because it'll be natural environment. His mof is like dragon fleas. Hell's yes. Although I guess dragon fleas would that's what you get when Tarrasques start to like shed or something. I don't know. Or fleas that you start scraping off of dragons. They're just as large as what are they? Fire beetles or something? I don't know. But there's got to be something pretty nasty about that. But yeah, even in battles, in major battles and conflicts, there are yeah. Yeah, Andrews is like adventurers are. Oh man, I love using environment. I love using it. I can't wait for the compendium to come together. I am thinking that the compendium will probably have it will be a mini setting of its own so that it really embraces the environment and there'll be like character options and things like that in it. But I can't wait for it to be finished. But you know, it's wine. It's got to take its time. So, guys, thank you very much for joining me on this adventure. We are still having streaming problems, but not on your end. There's still issues with there are still issues with how I stream. There's some kind of I have to jump through a loop. So the software I'm using allows me to turn the stream on. Then I have to jump into the control room and then turn it on mechanically rather than letting it blaze that way. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I want everybody to have a great day out there. Be safe, be well, have a great day. Thank you very much. Oh, tomorrow is Future Friday. For those who don't know, we're going to talk about the title of Future Friday is in the midst of war, in the midst of battle. I think it's in the midst of war. Anyway, we're gonna talk about what we're talking about today, but with a far future bent to it. So it should be pretty good. So anyway, guys, have a great one. I will see you later. Thank you very much. And psst, like, share, subscribe, spread the word. Let other people know about the show. And additionally, just have a great one. I'll see you later. Bye. See you.